Hello everyone, this is Bentley, and today we're going to do an update on the JC&P light that I've been testing. I've had it in 24/7 mode for a little over a month, based on time of when I actually filmed the initial impression versus when it released. It's like a month and a half at that point, and I wanted to give you some impressions. So before we dive in with my face too much, let's jump over to the tank and just look at each of the light settings that go around the clock here for the 24/7 mode. And then we'll talk a little more in depth about it. Alright, so here we are looking at the 29 with the Rubro Striata, and we're at the tail end of a demo mode. Let's go ahead and look at each individual time. So we're going to start at midnight, 12 a.m. You can kind of see from the very top of the lid there, notice it's very dim, but there's just this faint kind of whitish purple light. Very, very faint. This is a complaint I'll talk about in a second. Now we'll move to 3 a.m., which is the next one around our clock here. And here you can see just blue light. Again, it looks very dim in the tank. There's not a lot of light, but there is still some light. 6 a.m. is our next major checkpoint. And again, when we watch the full demo, you'll see it shift between these colors and it doesn't look as extreme, but noting each of these checkpoints matters. So here 6 a.m., we start seeing a lot of yellow light and a little bit of white coming in, so warm colors, kind of getting that sunrise feel. Then we move to 9 a.m., which is the next checkpoint. A little more red, so it's kind of orangey. This is your really good sunrise. Got that red and yellow tone, very warm colors. This is pretty good for plants. Then we get to noon where we're going to start getting the bright light. So here you can see almost bright white. What you don't really necessarily see is from the top. It's hard to see in the camera, but I can see with my eyes. It's only red and white light on at noon. Then we go to 3 p.m. And now it's a little more blue light, so it's kind of purple. It's red and blue. And then bright white, white's at maximum. This is our most powerful setting in the 24/7 mode. 6 p.m. We start to see, again, that kind of orange cast. Very warm color, kind of sunsetty. 9 p.m. Starting to get more blues. This is trying to simulate like twilight. Like before you get, not really twilight, but like dusk. A lot of blue tone, a little bit of very small amounts of red, so it's slightly purple, but it looks more blue, and white. This is very cool coloring. And then again, we get back to midnight. This very dim light. You can really barely see anything. To the eye, you see a little bit more than the camera shows. But I just want to show you guys that cycle. Let's go back and talk about this in a little more depth. So there you go. There's a quick look at each of the light settings on my tank. Now, admittedly, several of them are so dim you can barely see what's going on using a camera. That's kind of purposeful. One thing you'll also probably notice is there is a little bit of shimmer from the LEDs, that kind of like flickering appearance that can happen in some of the more economically friendly LED lights. You don't see that with your eyes. The cameras pick that up, and that has to do with camera frame rates and the way the lights, the power pulses inside the light naturally to power everything. It's a long scientific thing. The easy thing is to know that you don't see that with your eye. Only cameras pick that up. And I don't even know that you maybe saw it too much given the light intensities that we showed very briefly. So let's talk about some of those lights. And while I do, I'm going to put the tank in demo mode up here so that you can see in real time how the shifts occur between those staggered light settings, because it is a more gradual shift, and it's important to note that as we talk both critically and some of the benefits of this particular light. The first thing I'd like to mention, I personally hate 24/7 modes, and let me explain why. I don't look at like the Fluval light as a 24/7 mode. What I mean specifically is this style right here that Finnex created originally and many, many brands have cloned. As you'll have noticed, there's no off time. There is no time in this defaulted 24/7 mode where the light is off. And you can argue there's always moonlight, blah, blah, blah. In captivity, this gives the fish really no true rest period. It's not very healthy for them. You can do it with certain... Blue light is the most common to try and emulate moonlight, but moonlight is not truly blue. It's just wavelengths and how it goes into water. There's a lot of science behind this, but basically, my biggest gripe is that none of these 24/7 style lights have an off period. If there was any piece of feedback I could give to JC&P, don't clone the Finnex 24/7. Make your own. What I would really love to see is the ability to actually program each of these time points myself. That's probably a little more complicated than they're hoping to do, but if I could program my own light setting and set them, now I can create my own 24/7 curve that's a little closer to something like the nicer lights like your Fluval 3.0s, where you can do pro mode, and even the auto mode, where basically you have your own light curve designed into the light. And it's a lot better for a myriad of things. So let me talk about the real negatives, in my opinion, with this, beyond the fact that there is no rest period. The actual bright period of light is actually really well timed. It's about 6 hours. So it starts at noon, it really ramps up at that 3 p.m. setting, and then it starts to ramp down at 6 p.m. So there's about like 4.5 hours of good, solid, bright light, which I think that's good. What I don't like is the volume of blue light in the 24/7 setting. Long term, I think with a shorter tank especially, this is going to cause algae problems for your average aquarist. I luckily haven't seen much yet, but I've also got this like Anubias floating up top shading everything, and it's starting to get dust algae on it, but that's common with Anubias that isn't shaded. So that's not necessarily the light's fault. That is something that will happen to Anubias naturally, so I can't directly blame the light. Now, you'll comment, Bentley, there's barely any plants in that tank. I know. Between the hurting my back time and the new job, which by the time this comes out, I've already started, I lost a lot of my free time to work. And then there's also the game. I've lost my free time to kind of work on tanks in a way of like completely replanting a tank. But hopefully by the time that this launches, I think the weekend this launches actually, I'll actually be fixing the planting in that tank. It's bad that I have to plan that far out, but let's get away because that's not important for the review. Let's talk about what is important for the review. Overall, most of the settings are pretty dim. And if I'm wanting to see my fish, I probably want brighter light that isn't between noon and 6 p.m., the times when I'm at work. I want that good, solid light to be something I can control a little better. Now, granted, I can put it in full manual mode and ignore all that. But this gets back to that whole wanting to program my light my way. I don't think this is necessarily a fault for JC&P. A lot of companies, Chinese manufacturers, stuff like that, have just straight cloned the 24/7 mode that originally came out in some of the Finnex lights. And I get it. It was a very high demand program, so why not copy that thing that a lot of people were really excited about when it first came out? But nowadays, there's enough feedback out there where like that 24/7 mode is too much light. It's on constantly. It causes a lot of algae unless you have a really insane tank that can handle that. And it's not the best for the health of your fish. It's not horrible, it's just not great. We really want a rest period. I honestly think like this midnight to 3 a.m. instead of being that weird, very dim light and then going into blue, bright blue. It's actually brighter at 3 a.m. than it is at the midnight. I would just rather have the light off. That's a personal thing. I'm sure there's a way to... I have to dig in a little deeper. That's coming soon for the further testing on this light of what I can do in these like manual modes that are over here. But you can't program them the way that you can the 24/7's natural programming. And that kind of sucks. So let's talk about the good parts that I think JC&P is doing right so far based on my testing. And granted, I've tested this light for a little over a month, and right now I want to be totally talking only about the 24/7 mode. The light itself is just pretty well built. Despite it being an inexpensive LED, it's nicely built. I've accidentally banged that thing more than a few times. I've splashed water on it during water changes. My cats have messed with it when they're not supposed to. It hasn't so much as griped about any of that stuff. So kudos on that. It is UL rated. Recently, the guys at JC&P, I don't know if it's all guys, but their Instagram account reached out to me and talked to me through Instagram. So let me pull up those messages because I want to be really transparent about my conversation with the folks at JC&P and let you guys know some of the things they told me that involve like when it's going to go to market and things like that. And also one piece of feedback they had for me specifically. So let's go ahead and dive into that. Okay, so I have my message history with the JC&P Aquarium Instagram, which I'll link that down below. They're very, very nice folks. They asked me a couple questions just so they could understand, and I asked a couple questions back. So the first thing I said is like, hey, thank you for reviewing the light. I said, I haven't really fully reviewed it yet. I'm still testing it, but no worries. I love talking about gear when I can. I'm literally going to tell you everything I said to these folks, and they said back, because I just want you guys to have that kind of transparency. They said, I see. You're very good at reviewing the light, though. Thanks. I don't think it was that great, but, hey. By the way, how long is your 29-gallon that you're testing the light with? Here's an important one. I explained that it's a standard 30-inch, 29-gallon. So the same length as a 20 long, just taller, right? That's a standard 29 in the United States with a rimmed aquarium. Then I asked them, do they have any idea when the light will be available on Amazon? Does it have a UL rating or waterproof rating? I'd love to include this in the full report. So it is UL certified. It doesn't have a waterproof rating, but it is water resistant, which I've spilled water on it during water changes. I can confirm it is water resistant. They plan to have them up toward the end of February on Amazon, which I'll check that, and if I have a link, I'll have it at this video. And they also noted that the light I have in the video is only a 20-inch light, and that technically the correct light for my tank would be their 28-inch light, and they offered to send it to me. I said that I would reflect that, and I didn't say, hey, go ahead and send me the light, because I wanted to let that be your guys' choice. So, should I ask for the 28-inch light from JC&P and put the right light on the tank? It would be a fairer comparison to my previous Finnex. Or should we stay with the 20-inch and just kind of let that thing keep testing, and then later maybe test the 28-inch? Let me know. I want this to be pretty unbiased. Again, this light was sent to me by Carrie, who's a subscriber to the channel, so I didn't pay for it. It is subscriber provided, but that my review is just me messing with the toy, right? It's what I do. So, thanks again to the JC&P folks for reaching out, giving me some information. It's good to know that, it is UL certified, and it does have a water resistance, but not a waterproof rating. So for those who are used to like your watches, the Fluval light, some of those, they have specific waterproof ratings. That's a depth they can go to in water for a certain amount of time. This light does not have that, which that is a pretty expensive certification. It would make sense in a more budget-friendly light that that's not there. And that, in theory, by the time this video is out, they should be available on Amazon, which, if they are, we'll have a link down in the description below. Again, any link that's through Amazon. I am an Amazon affiliate. I do get a commission if you make a purchase through my links. They're paid links. I think that covers all of the FCC's requirements. Okay, so let me go back to this. If I could give any feedback to JC&P, other than I'm using a smaller light than I should be on my tank, this is important. Keep this in mind. So when you look at that color and you're like, man, that light's really dim, that's a 20-inch light on a 30-inch tank, not the light that should be on there, which is 28 inches. So give it a little leeway. It's still surprisingly bright for how much smaller it is compared to a light that should be used for that size tank. Now, what I can't, I know I'm going to gripe a lot about 24/7 mode, but I haven't liked it since I had some first experiences with them on a Finnex light when I got back in the hobby. I hated the 24/7 mode because it caused a ton of algae. And I always had light on. I would walk by my tank at 9 p.m. at night, and it would be lit. And mentally, it would be like, oh, is something wrong with the light? For like 2 months, I did it with this light because I kind of like put it, I'd like forced it like a bad memory in the back of my brain. And then with the first 2 weeks of this light being on there, I'd go past my steps, I was going upstairs to go to my room to start working on my computer or whatever I was going to do, and I would see the light on, I would stop. I'd poke my head over the side of the stairs, I'm like, why is it so... Right, 24/7 mode, it's always going to have some light. It would drive me crazy. And I'd look at my light, and all my other fish tanks are off at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m., and that thing still got light, and it would mess with my brain. So, that's my biggest gripe about the 24/7 mode. Overall, I think if you watch the steady curve as is how it goes, instead of just the hard transitions like I showed, it does transition nicely to each stage of light, which I appreciate that. The JC&P folks did a great job of cloning that effect from the Finnex light. And it doesn't look like it's blinking too much when it does that. It looks like a nice steady shift instead of... Remember when I was turning it up and down in the previous video, which we'll link that up in the corner, it would blink every time. And that's common in a lot of more inexpensive lights where you can adjust their intensity. It's just the power intensity literally changing, and the LEDs will flicker when that power intensity changes. There's some deeper science we could talk about that, but let's not. That's too boring, and let's try to keep this quicker. So, if I would change anything about this light, it would be a fundamental change in its firmware. And that would be, I would want to be able to have a program button. So I could hit program, choose a time, set up that light how I want, and then hit, either hit the time button again or hit set. And that would lock that in, and then build my own 24/7 mode. And then that light would naturally understand how to slowly shift from each light mode to each light mode. It's a lot less points than, say, like the Fluval Pro mode. It doesn't have to be as crazy because there's a little more limited setting here. It's not like 0 to 100% at 1% increments. It's just kind of like a 1 to 10 scale, so to speak. So it's 0 to 100% power in 10% increments. A lot easier, not quite as complicated. That would be my only real improvement. If I were on JC&P's product development team, and I said, how can we make this better? What's our next product? That is what I would look at doing. Or something that connects to a phone app, where you can program it a little closer to, say, like the Fluval light, or there's the AI primes that have a fantastic app you can work with. That would be my next iteration. Something I can have the user individually program. It doesn't have to be complex app software. It could be built into a remote that's a little more simplified. But that would just be something. Or I would change my 24/7 mode to have a couple of variations, maybe. Like maybe you have, 24/7 light, and then you have 16-hour a day light and 12-hour a day light, and something where there is a rest period of no light whatsoever. I don't know how you would easily label that on your remote, but there's got to be a way. Beyond that, let me just say the last things as we do final testing. There's going to be some manual mode testing that I'm going to mess with. A few of the other features that I just want to play with a little bit more before I do the final review. I can say within about a month, knowing that I've seen a certain amount of how my plants are being affected, what they're doing. I can generally get a feel for that, but I want to give it more time. I want to give it more time with the new plants as well. That way I can see with freshly planted things that are put in that tank, how well do they adapt to this light? Is it too little light output? Is it too much? Etc., etc. Those kind of things. Finally, just some last closing tips on 24/7 mode. I think it's fine for a beginner that has a well-planted tank with a lot of high-demand plants. And what I mean is your Pogostemon octopuses, your water sprites, your water wisterias, these things that suck up tons and tons of nutrients, or lots of floaters at your top, like duckweed or dwarf water lettuce, any of those kind of things, salvinia, all of your really good floating plants that are going to handle that light, that long better and shade some of the stuff down low. Now, if you have a low demand tank, it's mostly Crypts, and Java Fern, and Anubias. I would not use the 24/7 mode because I would be worried that I'm going to get a ton of algae on my leaves because it's just such a long photo period and there's a lot of blue light. I don't think that's necessarily the fault of JC&P. Like I said, there's so many manufacturers out there, especially Chinese-based lights, that have copied just the Finnex settings to the best of their ability. And I think Finnex kind of did it wrong in the first place. But they're the first one that had that setting. So it might sound like I'm unfairly bashing Finnex here, but everybody cloned what Finnex did. So it's kind of like they're the originator. They're going to get a little bit of my hire. And that's it. I kind of wanted to go over, do a quick review of this light, of its 24/7 mode of my testing so far, give you kind of a middle ground of how the testing's going, because I think that this light especially had quite a few views and interest. People were very interested in it. So I wanted to make sure that you guys got an update on this light as we keep going forward. Again, if it is out on Amazon, there will be links down below. I'd love to hear in the comments for anybody who has tried any of the JC&P lights. There are quite a few in the last one. I'd just love to hear from you. Are any of you following JC&P's Instagram? I'd be curious. They seem like lovely folks. They were very nice to me. And then again, should I get the 28-inch light that they've offered me and test that as well on this tank, because that is technically the correct size light for this tank? Let me know all that down in the comments. If you appreciate content like this, light reviews, product reviews, me being honest about how I don't like 24/7, please give me a little like. It helps with the magic YouTube algorithms. If you can't stand me mumbling about lights and complaining about Finnex because you think the 24/7 mode is perfect, you can hit thumbs down twice. Thanks for doing that. If you're not a subscriber, I do content like this all the time. Lots of product reviews, as well as all sorts of tips and tricks when it comes to plants, rainbow fish, you name it. So if you're interested in more content like this, definitely subscribe to the channel. Maybe even consider ringing that little notification bell so that you see all the notifications. I use the community tab quite a lot to put polls out and let you guys control the face of this channel. And if you're really dedicated and you love this content, consider becoming a member, because there is some behind-the-scene content just for members. And a lot of other perks too. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome. Really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to take a short moment just to thank all of the members on Patreon and here on YouTube for membership that are at the rainbow fish or higher level. Your names are scrolling past with your appropriate level. This is just a thank you. You folks make videos like this possible, as well as the ability to look at potentially other equipment in the future. If you are still watching and you're not a member and you want to have your name in the scroll here, or maybe just get an idea of a little behind the scenes of the stuff that I'm doing, some products I'm messing with, and other things that I'm considering testing in the near future, hit the join button down below, become a member. There's all sorts of levels. You'll get access to all the behind the scenes content at the lowest level, and then from there, there's all sorts of additional perks based on which levels you choose. Don't choose the two highest. They're jokes. Don't do it. Don't do it. My brain can't handle that. As always, guys, thank you so much. I hope to see you on Discord. Stay awesome.